How you doing?
What is sound healing?
Well, what
Sound
is
bath,
it?
sound meditation, sound therapy, sound medicine. What is it?
Yeah, it's it's an alternative way, much like Reiki or other energy healing, to get in alignment, right? So that you're in the best possible physical state to accept healing. I don't actually like the two words together, sound healing, although we use it a lot and people understand it much better now that way. But just like I always learned, Reiki isn't about healing, it's about enhancing someone's ability to heal. Because I think underlying, we all have this innate ability to heal ourselves. It's true. Our bodies are in a state of disarray. And I think you talked about this last time, is because of all the outside stuff going on, right?
Our
Then
body.
our bodies get out of alignment and they're not in ease anymore. They're in this dis-ease state. But if we can bring ourselves back with meditation, with sound, or with Reiki, or with yoga, or however you can get your body back into that alignment, then you're closer to where you need to be to heal. So it's not a direct question for me. Like there's a lot about sound healing that I could go into. I do call it sound healing or sound baths, or I've been saying sound medicine lately because just like I prescribe medicine as a nurse practitioner, it's not to heal someone. Like here's a news flash. Medicine doesn't always cure things, right? It's a combination of what we do for our patients that heal them or get them into a state where they can better heal themselves. But I think a lot of people come to me because they think I have the answer, number one, or I have a medication that's going to solve the problem. But a lot of what this therapy does, sound therapy, sound healing, is it just gets you into a state where you can best heal yourself. What about you, Lauren?
Sound healing to me, or sound therapy, sound bath, sound meditation, it is kind of, to me, it clumps into the idea of the meditative practice of emerging into sound to become whole, to become balanced, to become in the state of homeostasis, which is what our body naturally craves, that balanced place. And sound has the ability to go places that, other modalities cannot. And it is become such a personal, powerful tool for my wellness. And it has also become a way of life for me personally as a sound practitioner. And it just, I love the fact that there is so much science behind sound and energy, and the idea that if we zoom in on our cells and look at them under a microscope, and then, we're adding in vibration or sound, and how that literally can change things. And to me, that's one of the most powerful parts about sound healing in general. And I think that term healing is definitely controversial at times, but the definition of healing or heal is to become whole. And so that in itself makes it feel a little bit more, to me, a little bit less like, um, a cure-all, or one of those like catch-all terms. But the idea of becoming whole again and becoming back into that state of balance, that homeostasis place, is probably, to me, one of the most important parts about sound and sound healing.
Yeah, I like how you weave the word science, I feel like we're coming back around to a lot of the things that were used historically to heal. Medicine itself, like Western medicine, the pills that people take every day, the synthetic medicine that man has created, has not been around that long. In the big picture, as long as humans walk the earth, right? We have had sound healing, sound medicine, environment, like eco medicine, right? Things that we have taken from the earth directly and just used to help heal and to come into that balance. I love that word, balance, because that's really what it's about, what alignment is. So what is the science behind sound healing? Why is that, you know, a good adjunct to the pills that we take or the meditation that we do, the yoga or the exercise or all the things that people are telling us to do to stay in balance and healthy, eating right? What is sound and how is it different than all those other things that keep us healthy? And why, if I'm already healthy, why would like sound be better for me to do or good for me to integrate into my lifestyle now?
Well, everything's in a state of vibration. And as you said earlier, when our bodies or our energetic sense of ourselves is in a state of dis-ease, we create and become and get diseased. And so the idea of sound and vibration being that a lot of the instruments and tools that are used are typically harmonious. Therefore, the idea of entrainment, which is essentially an outer phenomenon affecting an internal phenomenon of entraining into that vibration or that state of vibration, whether it be sound or it's also something to kind of be aware of, like where energy, you can't always see it, but you can feel it. And so an example I like to use for that for people when they're trying to understand that concept is, when you walk into a room and you're like, oh, something's off about this space or this, the people in this room, and you can just feel it, like something's not right. A dog growling at someone, like he's feeling or she's feeling something from someone else, and it's an energy thing. And so to be able to be in a space that is with good intentions, paired with frequency, you receive healing. That is a Jonathan Goldman, who is a pioneer in sound healing, quote: frequency plus intention equals healing. And we know very powerfully, especially even in the medical world, the idea of the placebo effect, and that intention is a very powerful tool. And so then to be pairing it with something that is harmonious and then being surrounded by it, it's only, just that environment of an external factor of the idea of entrainment. And then you add in brain waves, the idea of brainwave entrainment, where our brain is very, again, it's all about harmony, it's all about balance, and becoming entrained with an external sound, our brainwaves will start to sync up with some of those sound waves, and then therefore lower down into the deeper places of the meditative state that our brainwaves dip into, which is something called theta or delta. And getting down into those meditative states, we allow our brains to go into the parasympathetic nervous system state, where we are in rest and digest. And in a world where we're so busy and constantly on our phones, whether it's, someone beeping at you on the highway, or even just the constant flashes of needing to respond, you're in the sympathetic nervous system. So we do not go down into that parasympathetic nervous system state often enough. And so the importance of being able to tune into places that you get entrained in those brain waves, down and turn on those parasympathetic states to be able to rest, to digest, to receive those intuitive guidances, or to receive and go into those meditative places. The theta brainwave state often gives us those dreamlike visions, similar to like when we're actually sleeping at night and have dreams. But you can be in those places without actually being asleep, which is, often called the place when you're tuning into meditative journeys, especially with sound.
Yeah. I've heard that called the 0 point,
Mm.
right? The place where you feel nothing and everything at the same time. You can get there. Maybe sometimes people equate that to a little bit of enlightenment. So we do these things spiritually to get to a higher place. The idea is to practice these things, right? So that we have them as tools, or I think there are studies, even I think it's 6 or 8 weeks of meditation every day, a daily practice. So meditation in general, this could be sound meditation, it could be guided meditation, but in general, this amount of time practice every day actually changes in the neuroplasticity in our brain. And for years, even when I was going to school, which wasn't that long ago, we didn't really think neural pathways can change. We thought this is the way it is, right? And now we're starting to discover that okay, how many years have humans been meditating on the earth? Longer than the pills were invented, right? Longer than that. So we're coming back around. And now that we have science, the idea is to use our science to validate it, sure, but isn't just experiencing it validation enough? Not for everybody. I get that. So I want to touch on a couple of things you said, and relate it to something that I've been playing with, practicing for a little over a year. And I've seen dramatic changes in my life in how I manifest, or how I have things happen in my life. And manifest is a word that people use a lot and throw around a lot now in these circles, but something that we don't need necessarily to be a sound healer. We don't need a collection of bowls or gongs like you and I do, Lauren. We have a lot of those, and those are fun toys, but I feel it is my mission as a nurse practitioner, but also as a sound practitioner, is to share with other people how they can use this in their day-to-day life, sound, to heal themselves or to use as meditation. So what do we all have? Most of us have a voice. Right. And your voice, your singing voice, your talking voice, it's the same voice. So it's the same voice. A lot of people are shy about their voice when they need to sing, or when they're put on the spot to sing, including me, right? And that's the same as our talking voice, though. So I've been practicing chanting for over a year, and a year and a half, very like religiously every day. And I've done it very formally with vocal transformation. But what I take away from that is, this is inside of me. I can use this. I don't need a bowl. I don't need a gong. I don't need to do so. What we do with our voice is so important, which is leading me into my next statement that is connected to your talk about entrainment. When we speak, it is so important what comes out of our mouth. It's not very much different what we think, right? Think before you speak. Have you heard that before?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you're like, I can't say that, right? Hold my tongue, right? But if we have the intent, or the right intent, and we live by that practice, right? We don't always do that. We're human. But what comes through our voice, or comes through our heart, or our mind, is really important to those around us, but then especially ourselves, to be able to look in the mirror and give yourself words of encouragement, or even just thoughts of encouragement. It all has, what you're talking about, vibration. So even before we pick up a bowl, or even before we you know blow into a flute, or touch the gong, or anything, we need to have this intent for healing. What do you want to get out of your practice before you get on the yoga mat? A lot of people practice yoga I just want to work out. But why? What do you want to feel is really more powerful than how you want to look or what physically you want to manifest, but the feeling that you want. And the feeling is vibrations, right? And entrainment, right, is to continually program our mind with these intentions. Intent is to actually, I'm doing this. Intentions are all in good, right? Like, but your intent is to make things happen. My intent to meet with you, Lauren, is to share this information with people and be able to then answer questions as they come in about sound in particular, but also how do we integrate it into our lives? So we can talk about what it is and the science behind it and the way we practice. But tell me more.
Well, like you said, we are a sound tool in ourselves. Using our own voice. The voice is one of the most powerful sound tools, and the ability to retune or tune ourselves is innate. We have it, with the first sound that we make when we, are born. We cry, we express ourselves, we openly, right? There's that expression. And one of the really powerful things that I love knowing and sharing about, our own voice is even the idea of the ancient Egyptians with vowel sounds, A-E-I-O-U. Being able to chant those sounds, you can physically feel them in different parts of your body. And then you can also know that they have this like really sacred intention behind them, that they help retune us. They retune our energetic sense. And that in itself is, I think, well, first of all, I think it's super cool, but it's also something that, again, free sound tool, ability to be able to retune and get yourself into a more, aligned state at any time, anywhere, for, free dollars, which we all love. The other
Right.
idea is, the idea of just, again, putting yourself in harmonious states or harmonious places. And so to be able to be surrounded by instruments, which is something else we can start to chat about too, is that there are many different instruments that are utilized in sound healing or sound therapy, from, instruments that are tuned that have, notes, to instruments that don't have necessarily notes per se, but they create a vibration, they create a frequency, they create a sound that can be measured in hertz, or even just something that can perhaps even be maybe a little dissonant, that might feel to some people agitating or aggravating. And the idea behind that is to kind of shake up that agitation, to then shift you into a place of returning to your sense of balance. It's almost like, when the heart is fibrillating and we shock the heart, we stop the rhythm to then let the heart restart at its own, intrinsic beat. And so, I don't know that that's like a really great adjective or sorry, example of what that means, but that's just what popped into my head. So it's just something that feels like, because I think sometimes in sound, people ask, why do you play sounds that might feel a little bit more darker or deeper or can be agitating? And in the sense, it's like shaking things up so that we can notice it, get rid of it, and recalibrate again.
Yeah, I mean, think about the drum and how it was used. That's an instrument without really any pitch. I mean, sometimes if you hit, technically, it does have some pitch and different pitches depending on where you hit it. As a drummer, I could say that, but people think notes. It's a flute or it's the different bowls with the different actual pitches. But the drum is so powerful that it resonates with our heartbeat, right? So you mentioned heart and stopping the heart. There is a certain beats per minute that will get you into that meditative state. And you don't have to drum for that long. So think about like the drums that are very easy to come by, not very difficult to even make a drum. Think about it. I used to do it when I was a kid. I used to take an empty like coffee can and put something over it and just beat the drum, right? I'm not saying that's what you should do, but it's not with, you know, without, or it's not like that difficult to find something. And interestingly enough, I want to go back to the voice just for a minute. You had mentioned crying when we're born. From 0 to 6 months, it's very rare that a mom would be like, shut up, right? Because the crying that the baby does is a signal, right? That they need something, they need to be changed, they need to be fed, they just need to be held. We need 8 hugs a day, right? Minimum. That's our dosing of hugs. I'm a hugger and I don't even know if I get 8 hugs a day. I need to start hugging people at work, I think. But from 0 to 6 months, we're developing our root chakra actually. And it's so important to just let the baby have that, right? Let that develop in the baby so that they can be heard. But why do we start to like diminish that when kids get older, right? It starts at a very young age where we, shh, quiet, this is happening or that is happening. And I see it in adults now when I offer the bee buzzing breath in the beginning of yoga class. Are you familiar with that? You are, right? So bee buzzing breath, for those of you who don't know, you close your eyes, you actually just press on the tragus, this part of your ear, like, I don't want to hear you, right? So, and then you hum silently to yourself. Now, when you do that, if you guys try that, right? When you do that, you want to try it? When you do that, did you hear anything? Did you hear the person next to you? Did you just heard yourself? And that's not very powerful. We didn't even take a full breath or whatever. The idea is to breathe into our lower abdomen, right? To do that, you can put your hands on your lower abdomen, breathe in, making space for the diaphragm to push down as you like inhale and inflate the lungs. And then you do it. And then you have all this breath behind it. You're pushing out on your abdomen. There's a lot of breath work that can be done just with this bee buzzing breath. Take 5 rounds of that and see how you feel.
There you go. Sound healing on the go, baby. In your
It
pocket.
is, and 5 rounds of that, if you take really deep breaths, it's a minute or less, depending on how long you breathe. But a real like meditative breath would probably be a whole minute. Is a minute a long time to take out of your day?
No.
But yet
And
even
it
I
can
don't
be
seem
done.
to find the time to do that.
Can be done.
It can be. It can be.
But if in moments that you find yourself wanting to explore and have a more deeper meditative experience with sound, I think one thing that people often ask is, how do you do a sound bath, or how do you attend a sound bath? And, you know, the simplest answer is getting yourself as comfortable as possible, because the comfort is key. Warm socks, warm blankets, eye pillow. Eye pillow helps reduce the sensations to the optic nerve, which helps us get into those places of deeper meditation. Um, whether it be laying down, whether it be in a chair, on a bed, or sitting upright, whatever feels the most comfortable for you. So comfort, number one. Number two, getting yourself in a space where you can enjoy safely, comfortably. So maybe it's a yoga studio with a group, maybe it's in a private space in your own home. And then really is being open and listening. That's it. There's no special sauce formula for being able to receive. It's just simply being open to listening, because our brain and our cells will start to respond. Even if we're thinking, even if we're, kind of in our thinking mind, or, we've got some thoughts processing, or, well, I wonder what that is, or I wonder what that is. Eventually, that brain entrainment starts to unfold and happen. And sometimes it doesn't. But regardless, we are 70% water. and water makes a great conductor of sound. And so imagining the sound waves that you're around or listening to are traveling through you physically in your body and helping realign certain places. That's why, like I said earlier, sound goes where other things cannot. And, we use sound in the hospitals to break up kidney stones. So there's a very powerful example of how sound can travel into places of our bodies. Granted, we're not utilizing the sound in that way for during a sound experience or sound meditation, but you can think of how the sound will really goes through our skin, our dermatones and our skin, goes through our bones, the crystalline structure of our cells, goes into our ear, to our vagus nerve, which affects our brain waves. There's so many different ways we can absorb and receive the sound. And again, really the only thing you have to do is listen. Get comfy and listen. What would you say, Vic? Would you add anything or
I'm curious because I know, Lauren, you have more of a private practice where you see clients that come in for one-on-ones, and I don't do that. I do my group events. I get to see more people at once, and I have limited time. So it's different, I imagine, for someone to come in for a one-on-one session. And when you said like some people want to be in a group and that's comfortable for them, and I was thinking, I was like, oh, well, maybe some people aren't like interested in coming to group yoga because there's other people around it and they want a more private experience. So can you talk a little bit about what a private experience? And I know practitioners probably do different things, but what do you what's to be expected in a private experience?
Well, I think it's different for every practitioner, but for me personally, it also varies for the person. It depends on what the intention is. That's for me personally, as I've navigated through this, I've done some, shamanic training as well. And to me, there's many different ways to move energy, and the drum and the gong can be a little bit more, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but it's a much more transformative and powerful way to move energy versus utilizing, well, it's not necessarily less powerful to utilize a voice or crystal singing bowls or chimes. It's just the intensity, I think, is a little less. So it depends if someone has a lot of trauma or if someone is experiencing some really deep series of grief. There may be some more soothing sounds utilized for a client. There may be times where putting some of the sound tools physically on the body, tuning forks or metal singing bowls. You can even do crystal singing bowls and, really physically feeling the movement of the sound into the body. And then I go back to intention a lot because it just is become such a powerful tool in this work is having the intention. What is the intention? Is the intention to relax or is the intention to release some old stuff? That may vary with what sound tools are used or chosen because of what they can do for people during these experiences. The rattle or the shaking or the, louder pitched or felt sounds, maybe something that moves things about versus something that's a little more soothing, like a soft, gentle crystal bowl experience, where typically when I play sounds in the hospital that I work at, it's often choosing the crystal alchemy bowls because they're a softer and gentler way to experience sound. So yeah, it's a very variable thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote down a little note of it says passive reception because I feel like when you go in for a one-on-one, it's that personal. It's almost like when I go in for, it sounds like acupuncture, right? I tell my practitioner what's been going on and why I'm there. right? And I do acupuncture pretty regularly. So some days I'm feeling great, but I'm still receiving because I might be feeling great, but how much is going on underneath the hood of the car, so to speak? We don't know. So I always want to come back to balance. So sometimes if I'm just feeling great, hey, just put me back into balance, right? Or as a woman, like, let's see where I am in my cycle and what support I might need in that way. So passive reception, like I do in an acupuncture treatment as being the recipient, but then sounds like very much so a similar, like you're not really diagnosing the patient as much as just allowing them to receive and realign them. In a group setting, I think it's different. There can be a collective intent and just as powerful. I love to use the drums in a collective setting and go around the room so that everyone can feel the vibration of the drum. I don't always start that way or end that way, but it's very grounding. And I think you had said it's like that it's more powerful than the voice, but it is passive. Whereas if I have a room full of people and I'm asking them to chant or do bee buzzing breath or something like that, it's a more active, how can I activate this within myself? And I think giving somebody, either a private client or a group clients that are in session with me, something that they feel like they can tune into and use on their own is really great. But a lot of times people just want to come and receive very passively. And that's just so relaxing and so wonderful. And I mean, at the end of the day, as a practitioner, I wanted to get into this a little bit too, is how it makes you feel or how it makes me feel as someone who is doing the sounds. Because a common question I get or a comment is, oh, you did all the work, or are you drained, or how does it affect us if you think of it as we're doing the work or we're giving sound or we're giving of ourselves. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, I think we're receiving sound as well. We're just not allowing ourselves to get into those deeply meditative places because we're an active participant in creating the sound. But there's been many experiences where, I'm playing the gong or I'm playing the sound bowls, and or I'm singing with the shruti box, which is another instrument that we utilize. It's like I get into the like kind of, spinny places where it's like starting to get down into those more meditative places. But again, being the active participant who's sharing the sounds, you can't get to that place. So, um, yeah, I mean, I think I don't necessarily think that it's draining. I think the draining part is the packing everything up and physically moving sound tools, not the actual act of, sharing the sounds. Certainly creating and holding an energetic space for a group of people or a client can certainly have its energetic exchange, if you will. But as far as like being drained or feeling like, there's been a taking away, it doesn't feel like that for me personally.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a channel. Do you know the prayer of Saint Francis?
I think I do.
Yeah. I feel like I'm a channel for peace.
Hmm.
That I can even visualize a light coming in through the crown of my head and then having that be my source of energy where I don't feel like it's dragging me into something, or a lot of people are like, oh, how do you protect yourself, or how do you, but it's this light that comes in here and then shines out. And that seems to really just translate. I think it's a practice. And then I usually just have to ground myself at the end because, like you said, you can kind of get like in it. And the more entrainment we do, or the more sound healing we do, Lauren, the quicker we get into it. And I'm sure I have not done shamanic training as you have, but I'm sure even that has brought you to a different level of entrainment. Your brain just like gets into it right away. So I know that if I talk to my hypnotherapist teacher and we do, it's almost like she can start talking to me and I'll already be on this level of receiving that I am not like with other people because it's this entrainment. So think about that as we weave this word intent into all the conversations that we're having right now. It's That's the baseline, right? It's the intent to heal, and that carries through as practitioners intent. So I think the one thing that people may be wondering and is, how can I become a sound healer, or how can I get into this practice and integrate it into whatever I do in life? Maybe I'm not a nurse, maybe I'm a teacher, maybe I'm a lawyer, maybe I stay at home with the kids and want to try something new. Maybe I'm a yoga teacher and want to incorporate this. Like, what would you say to people who are really just interested in getting into sound healing? Because a lot of times people ask, well, I'm not a musician. How can I get into it if I don't know anything about music?
I mean, anyone can utilize sound for their healing. Again, back to the idea of intention with frequency and, you know, becoming someone who shares sound with others. Certainly I think finding, reading, getting information, finding a teacher, finding a mentor or someone who has experience in sharing sound. One of the bigger things that I think folks don't always recognize, that even though you're not necessarily reading music or following a specific script for how to do it, I think the idea behind knowing the intention and then also understanding like what can be brought up for certain people, what is appropriate to play for certain folks or participants. And then, trainings. I mean, now that we're in this realm of the world, I think post COVID, there's been an exponential boom in the idea of wellness for people. And, the idea of even starting this podcast and this place to share information has been a piece of it, where folks are learning on how to build their toolbox. And so there are trainings that have, evolved. The one that I first was introduced to was at a place in New York, in the Catskills of New York, called Sage Academy of Energy and Sound. And, there's, I mean, I can think of 5 to 6 teachers of mine that I've had throughout the years and then trainings that I've done. And now I am blessed to be able to co-host a training with one of my best friends who we first got into sound together. And, we're in, north of Boston. So there's places and opportunities that continue to arise that, and virtually, there's virtual offerings for trainings. I know you've worked with Marin doing vocal transformation for a matter of, weeks and months. And that's the thing, is that this is becoming more and more available to us. And if, there's different ways that it can be utilized and learned. And I don't think I'm not a musician. I'm not a trained musician. I can't read sheet music, but yet here I am sharing sound and, these meditative experiences for people. And that's okay. It's an evolution, and there's no perfection. There's no, I often say there's no right or wrong way, which I don't know that I fully agree with that now that I've been practicing for a little bit longer. You can play things a little too loud, or, what you're doing or how you're doing it. Um, but I think there's things to keep in mind. There's considerations for things in playing. But if it feels like something you want to start singing a flute or, playing a drum, then go for it. What would you say, Vic?
I am a trained musician. And
Yes.
as a trained musician, I agree with the statement that there isn't a right or wrong way to do things. But again, we'll come back to there is the intent, what you want, right? What you want to get. How do you want to feel when you do it? And then to be able to tune into that feeling. So there are wrong things technically in anything we are trained to do as musicians, I'm sure, but it's also very creative and intuitive, and I love playing music. I've been playing the drums since I could hold sticks in my hands. My dad was a drummer, so there was no way getting around that. And likewise, my children, as soon as they can hold, you can grasp at a very young age, they were in music together, which is a really, really great program if you have young children and want to get them involved, but don't know or feel comfortable and want to get out of the house and just be social with other moms with their kids. Music Together is a franchise and you should look into it. It it really is foundational, important for children to hear music, to feel it, to be around it. And if you are someone who has no musical ability, have never been trained in music, never held a rattle when you were a baby, I find that really hard to believe, but it can happen. The kids weren't brought up with music playing around the house, and that certainly is. Then the one thing you can do in service to yourself before you start doing group trainings and sound healings for groups of people and private one-on-ones and becoming a professional sound healer is practice and just sit with the music, listen to music. I know Marin, you mentioned Marin, a vocal transformation. I remember her saying, listen to different music, just listen to a variety of music. And that was like a homework assignment when we were doing our group training. And I listened to a variety of music, but even for me, it got me to listen to music that I'd never listened to before, or I haven't listened to very much, and just notice how I feel. So listen to music. The other thing I did, even though I am a musician, I never owned a bowl. I got a bowl for my household. It was just a frosted crystal bowl. They're not cheap, but if you're careful and the intent is to just take it out when you want to use it, I think it's a valuable investment. And I played it for my daughter for 5 minutes a night before she fell asleep. And it really did help her. I mean, what do you have to lose if your child has a hard time falling asleep or you have insomnia and you're up at 3 a.m. anyway and you can't get back to sleep, than to have something to listen to or to play. I'm not saying to play a horn or something in the backyard at 3 in the morning, but certainly something to soothe you. And if you start to practice and get that with the intent of healing, even just yourself, start with yourself first, always, and whether you have music experience or not. So that's my spiel, getting on the soapbox a little bit on that one.
And to add to that, if that's not in your realm house to like buy a bowl or get your own instruments, there's so many people who have been sharing sounds online. And so
Mhm.
you can, one word of advice for that is making sure whatever speaker you're using, I always highly recommend headphones, but being able to utilize something that's going to give a good audio quality, because it won't necessarily get you that same kind of results if you're not.
Mhm.
But that's always an option too.
Mhm.
I've started a YouTube channel when I first started sharing sound, and I've had people say, "Oh, I turned on your sound to go to bed and I fell asleep." And it's like, those are the things. So there's accessibility of this anywhere. And also, again, it can also, it can start your practice, or your involvement in sound can start from anywhere. And it doesn't have to be, these lots of financial investments to be able to enjoy it.
Mhm.
But
The Insight
I,
Timer app is really good too.
yes, that as
Yeah,
well.
and free. Can be free.
Free, free, free. The other thing too, I feel like we're gonna have to do an episode part two with sound tools. So you'll have to stay tuned for that, because there's just so many different amazing sound tools that we can share and show you that really create such a potently powerful experience with sound.
Yeah, for sure. For
Mhm.
sure. And I want to hear more about the science behind it too, because there's so much to related to other things. I want to make sure before we go, though, that we talk a little bit about the integration and how we use it in our lives personally and maybe even professionally. I I've talked to you, Lauren, about this. I've talked to Marin about this. I've talked to several people in my life about this, about I've been a performer in music for a long time. I don't know why is it so hard for me to just bring something into work and get over it and just share this in my workspace. But that is something I am hoping to do, and I would love to just volunteer for the staff that I don't know, maybe my own staff, but then the staff in the hospital that I don't know. And Lauren, you have like been paving the way for people like myself who want to bring you don't have to be a nurse. You don't I work in an office, right? So you don't have to be in a hospital to bring this in. Can you just share a little bit about your experience, because you've been doing it for a while, and I know you kind of feel me in this plight of the
Yes.
pioneer way, right?
Course. And I mean, and this is why we created the space to start talking about integrative wellness, integrative medicine, because that really is the way of the future in health. And we know that, and there's continue to be, more studies, more research of the facts that help support this work. And for me, the beginnings of bringing it into the hospital really started when COVID began, because the reality of doing something integrative that, you know, people weren't really aware of, and there wasn't going to be any touching or physical contact. Sound was like kind of like a almost a no-brainer for when it was presented to it was presented at first for the nurses, for the staff, for wellness, because, we were obviously going through a lot of chaos and change in the hospital with COVID happening, and staff uh, wellness was not great. And so the intention behind it was to share a new way of finding relaxation, finding some stillness. And, I had the chance to present what I had learned through my own experiences with having cancer at 27, and then going through my series of medical treatment, and then knowing and recognizing that I needed more and I needed a bigger toolbox. And one of the tools was sound healing. And so to be able to get to share it with staff was really the gateway into people starting to go, oh, okay, here I am sitting in my, hospital attire in a chair in a patient hallway that, was empty, and I'm listening to sound healing and I feel relaxed. And it was truly the staff's response to their experience, which was, generally positive, that they felt a little peace and relaxation for, a short period of time, and then went back to their workday. And so I think that's where that was really my entryway into just bringing stuff in and sharing it. And, there was partially part of it was getting the invitation to do that and allowance. And that's where there's some friction that happens in a lot of places where, there isn't the time or the space, and there isn't the invitation. And so I mean, I can tell you right now, there's times where I've brought in a chime, like one of my swinging chimes, and I brought it into work and just played it for staff. I played it for a couple patients. And like, again, it's not, this is the thing of being the pioneer in this realm of the world, in this time frame in the human experience in 2024, is that, showing people the best way for people to really understand or support or get behind something is to be able to experience it for themselves. They can read all they want about it, but until they actually experience it and recognize, oh, okay, something is happening here. And for me, that was the big entryway was allowing people to experience it for themselves. And then it was the little bit more openness to receiving it and the invitation to come back and share it again. And, there's no easy way to make someone listen or do something, but it could be just an invitation. And again, we can only meet people where they'll meet themselves as well. And so that's another roadblock at times for this work, is that some people are scared. They aren't sure. They're not, they're wary of what might happen. And especially with emotions, right? Or emotions are just energy in motion. And so utilizing sounds and intentions in this way and going into those meditative places, we can become emotional, and not everyone is open or okay with becoming emotional. So it's a slow process. It's a slow build, a slow burn, as I like to say. But yet it's happening. It's happening all around us. One of my teachers, I believe it's United Airlines, has now started to offer a channel of sound healing on their, repertoire of stuff that people can listen to when they're on the plane. And just being able to have the access to it, the awareness of it is the other piece. Maybe the hospital channels on the TVs will start to offer a sound healing channel. Who knows?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there has to be multiple ways that we're, integrating and making this available to people. And like we've already discussed here, like, can be done virtually. It can be done in person with a one-on-one group. It can be done with a big group. It can be done in simply a yoga class or without any instruments at all and
Mhm.
utilizing your voice.
Mhm.
So it's just a matter of finding the path of least resistance and sometimes finding the path of the most resistance to
Right.
then get in.
I think integration for me personally has been just daily, doing something daily for me. It's been very focused on chanting, meditation, and then just bringing that into the rest of my day is incredible. If I start the day out like that, it is so grounding, and so I just feel a lot more connected to, sometimes people say source, but I feel like I come from a place, I make decisions throughout the day, professionally and personally, from a way different perspective and point of view than I would otherwise. And it's changed my life. I've been meditating for a long time, and I've even done Reiki for a while, um, over a decade. And this has upped it. Just bringing sound into my life daily has been personally integrating it, and now just wanting to share it. I was thinking when you were talking about the plane and the United Airlines, I think you said that uses it as an option for people. How wonderful is that? On an airplane, there are so many people who are anxious about flying and popping pills to stay calm. And here we have this option now to listen to sound healing. Oh, that's amazing. I read recently that I think it was a study that was done, and the radiologist of MRIs was somewhat of a trained neurolinguistic programming expert, right? And so they would, which if you don't know that, they're using their voice to calm people with the choice set of words, right? And the way they talk. It's a whole other segment we can talk about, NLP. But they were trained to do this so that people could be more calm in an MRI. Think about those high anxiety places where we can integrate sound healing, whether using our voice or music or meditation. It's happening, like you said, Lauren. And I'm just so happy to be a part of it. And I'm glad that we're doing this. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, for being here, for receiving, for listening, for tuning in. And, we can give some options for you in the comments as well to tune into sound or to tune into training or, whatever you feel may be helpful and beneficial to you to utilize and learn more about sound. But yeah, stay tuned for episode part 2 for for an introduction of some sound
Part
tools,
two.
because
Yeah.
you know it's going to happen. So
And definitely send, I don't know, do we have an email or some ways people have ideas or topics or questions so that we have,
Integrative Nurse Podcast at gmail.com.
oh, say that one more time.
The Integrative Nurse Podcast at gmail.com.
Yes. So you can email with questions, topic, anything, all the things.
Thanks for
And
being
you
here.
and I are getting together super soon. I can't wait. Yay!
Yay!
Maybe we'll upload some fun sounds together for people to
Oh,
share with people.
yes, yes. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, and all who tune in.
Love you.